Good afternoon, and welcome to AIADA's AutoTalk. I'm your host, Rachel Soleimani. Before I introduce today's speakers, a few quick reminders. Everyone that is registered for today's program will receive a copy of the recording by early next week. And if you have any questions, feel free to enter them into the lower right side of your interface under the Q&A bar. Now, join me in welcoming back our car guys, Bob Grill, Senior Partner Development Manager at Carfax, and Mike Rosman, Automotive Consultant with over 44 years automotive retail experience. We really love this dynamic duo. I won't take any more of their time, and I'll let them take it away.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, whatever part of the country you're in. We appreciate you being here. I'm Bob Grill, and Mike Rossman's on with me. Say hello, Mike.
Good afternoon. It's nice to be with all of you once again.
Always a pleasure teaming up with Mike. We really enjoy doing these sessions, and we deeply appreciated being asked back to do this one. So with that, let's roll. We'll keep it on a nice, tight timeline for you and deliver a lot of information. And here we go. So, Mike, taking a look at the agenda today, we need to start by looking at where we're starting from, right? We need to look at where we're currently at. So what are the best techniques, you think, for actually taking a look at 2018 and giving it an assessment? What would you think?
Well, I think it's important to go back and look at what we've done so far this year as we look ahead toward 2019. And some of the things that we find that we really need to take a close look at, obviously, is to rank our months we've had so far from best to worst as far as profit and volume. And obviously, we've got to look at cost of sale to do that. And we're going to give you a few things here that are kind of barometers as to what your cost of sale should look like on your inventory. So as you can see here, we recommend it being about half of what your new car cost of sale is. And we generally find if your cost of sale gets lower than approximately 50% of your new car inventory, we generally will see the volume improve a little bit as used cars are a bit more customer friendly when it comes to cost. So take a close look at that, and obviously you've got your average selling price as well, which in turn gives you your profit. So those things are vitally important to take a look at, and then we've got to look at ways that we can improve on that, and we'll discuss a few of those as we go forward. The other thing that we want to look at is a dollar-day supply of inventory. Generally speaking, you want to look at 30-day, dollar-day supply. So that is an important thing. And then obviously looking at the brand mix. And the mix, we would recommend that you take a look there at the different stocking levels. You'd want to be somewhere around 40 to 50% of your brand, whatever your new car brand is. And of that percentage, you'd certainly want to look at around 80% CPO. We find that to be a good benchmark. So you want to benchmark yourself against these types of things to see how well you're doing. The other 30 or 40% that we want to look at is stuff that sells well in the marketplace where you're at. That varies across the country. You know, in certain areas, trucks may be better than cars. In some areas, maybe cars are a little bit better. And obviously, SUVs are in the mix as well. Then the other 20% or so that we have left, that's for lower price units. And, you know, if you want to try a few things, maybe you're in a luxury store and you haven't really tried pickup trucks, you might want to throw a few pickups in there to see how well they turn. And obviously the turn is the important part. That's how fast we're able to get our inventory turned over. And looking at the age of your inventory is vitally important. As we go through and go into used car departments, when we find, generally speaking, that the reconditioning is something that can get out of hand rather easily. So you really want to take a look at your reconditioning costs month by month as well and look at the spending trend as far as reconditioning. And also your turn time. The faster you get them to the front line, the better. We want to look at a maximum of 5 days unless they need paint work, then you can obviously make it a little bit longer there. However, on the reconditioning cost side, it's important to take a look too at your ROs coming from your service department. I was in a store here a couple of years back, and kind of a funny story. I asked them how much they thought the most expensive windshield wipers in the world could be, and they said, oh, around $40 or so. I said, well, you just got charged $125 to install a set of wiper blades, and you got charged $100 for the wiper blades. And they said, no, that can't be right. I said, well, it's right here on this RO. So you might want to take a look at that. I know there's a lot of pressure on service to increase their PVRs in service as well, but that one's a little extreme, and you may find some issues like that in your own store. So it's always good to go back and take a review of those. And you really want to try to manage that reconditioning cost. The other thing that I would say to you there too is if you're not taking a look at, and here's a profit leak that we find, when you're looking at cars for trade, we estimate what that reconditioning cost is going to be, and we never take the time to match that up to the actual cost. So we may be missing that either way. We may be coming up a little short on our estimate, so we put a little more in that car, and then we end up spending a lot more in reconditioning than we estimated, and that's a profit leak that you can close the gap on if you really concentrate on making those two things match. So it's important to be looking at what the estimated reconditioning cost is on appraisals versus your actual cost when they come out. And if you'll do that, you'll find that you can close that gap, you'll get better at it, and in turn increase your gross profits. So certainly important.
Yeah. Hey, Mike, I got a quick question for you. A lot of the dealers today are just saying that, the fun's gone. It's a grind. It's nothing but stats. It's nothing but this, that, and the other thing. And here we are telling them how to measure stats and so forth. What things like that 20% for other in the brand mix and cost of sale. What do you got to say to that? How do you make sure that you keep a little levity in the job and not just make it all about this and that number?
Well, I think, it's important as a team to really get excited about the inventory, the things that you're doing. And by that, spending a little more time with your sales team, talking about the cars, talking about the excitement of the cars that you have on your lot. I mean, I go back when I sold cars, and that's been a long time ago, but still I get excited about looking at nice cars. And obviously when they come out of the service department, we should have a lot of nice cars to talk about and be thinking about who I could put in that car. And, so if we're not spending time to really get those cars when they come up, go out as a team and take a look at the car and decide, who we can find to fit that car, what we can do with it, how we want to display it. All of those things I think are critically important that you do to have a little fun with what you're doing. If you're just going to have inventory and it's going to park out there and you don't talk about it, you don't get excited about it, it's not a lot of fun. If you do, you create a lot of interest, at least going back in my recollection, most everybody that's in this business does have an affinity. They like cars and they enjoy being around them. So you've got to create a little excitement with your own team, and that excitement falls over to customers as they come in the store.
Yeah, that makes sense too. And a lot of dealers today face a whole new realm of inventory and where it comes from. We lease cars more than we ever did. Our lease return rates have gone through the roof. Some dealers get overwhelmed with those lease returns. They're really not sure what to do with them. They feel like sometimes there are too many of them. And, quite honestly, when the appraiser or the used car manager is sitting there looking at those lease returns, and they're comparing them to the rental cars that are out there and the fleet cars that are out there, they're really missing some opportunity there, Mike, because, a properly owned, maintained, personally owned lease car certainly has a tremendous more value than your run-of-the-mill auction returned rental car or fleet car, commercial car. And, dealers are starting to recognize that, hey, you know what, I might be giving up our very best opportunity to my competition. If in-house doesn't retain its lease vehicles and they indeed let them slip out of their dealership, they're certainly giving them to their immediate competition. But if they let them out of the brand, now you're welcoming a lot of the independents and the different shops to have what was your best inventory. Would you agree with that?
Well, I would. And the other thing that it does is by allowing those cars to get away, let somebody else be able to set the market on your cars.
That's exactly right.
If you control the market, you can control the pricing. If you don't control the market, you won't control the pricing. So it's vitally important, and I think that's a real key to these lease returns, is to make sure that we're stretching them. It's interesting to me that you find a lot of stores where they run short of inventory, so they go out to buy something and they'll pay more for that car at auction than they would at their own door.
To your point about a story in that car, it should go in that listing. You agree? And rather than doing that VIN, hell, everyone knows that power windows, power locks, steel screws, that's all standard equipment these days. But making that car stand out, especially if it's your own best customer who serviced it and maintained it at your dealership, and it's a lease return unit versus just a standard car we bought at auction. You agree with that for the listings?
Oh, absolutely, and I think you could price that car higher as well. You know, you've got a story to tell, and the story will still sell the car. I just had a call yesterday from a friend of mine looking at a car and asking about the story on the car. And after I talked him through the story on the car, he was a little more excited about the vehicle. So, you know, it's the story still sells the car.
Yeah, no question about that, right?
Absolutely.
And again, it goes back to what you're saying about giving up your car to your competition. Keep that car, put a solid listing in there. Don't do just a VIN explosion. And you got a one-off car that's well maintained, got the right equipment, the right color. Keep that car, but explain it in your listings. Absolutely. You know, we touched on appraisals a little bit, but now if we're looking at the competition, you know, strengthen your appraisal and maximizing your opportunities on appraisal. We know the stats. The stats say that 70% of the consumers coming into the dealership today have a trade-in, right? And I know you were always a big proponent of doing the right thing and taking the time and trying to maximize the trade. You get the trade, you automatically sell a car. That's the only way to get a trade, right?
Absolutely. But if we're not taking a look at our opportunities, so as they call it, look to book opportunities, and really look at that, and we have to look at ourselves and say, you know, how good am I at getting this car, and what's my percentage? Am I getting 20% of the cars I look at, or am I getting 50 or 60? You know, you should shoot for a high number. That's going to make you better, and it also gives your sales team a lot more confidence if you're on top of those appraisals and you're trading for a lot of cars. You can go back to them and say, hey, look, you know, we're trading for half the cars we look at, which is a pretty high number compared to competitive stats. I think, you know, you should look at a minimum of 50% look to book. If you can do even better, that's great. Some cases, you know, we can't trade because customers owe a little bit more than they're worth, that type of thing. But obviously, taking a hard look at it and making the customer understand the appraisal, I think, is the important feature too, that sometimes we don't talk about. If we're not using a format that the customer can understand and look at, and also if you use a form where you go through the car, show what the reconditioning costs are, you're giving the customer a reason to trade, number one, and you're justifying the value of the car, number two, which helps your salesperson close the deal.
Absolutely. Now, if we're going to keep them and we're going to do the right job appraising them and we're going to keep them for stock and we're going to keep them for retail, the next thing when we look at our competition, right, is how we merchandise those cars. More than ever, things like clear pricing, right? When you're online, you got to have clear pricing. You need to be able to explain why that vehicle's priced the way it is, right? So many dealers today are using market tools to know the market pricing, and they're all driving to that market pricing. But again, not standing your car out by itself, not explaining why you have it priced either above what the normal market is or below the normal market. You know, you don't just have to hit that normal market button. If your car is better than market, if your car has something to talk about, well, then you got to let the place know. And if it doesn't, you know, a car priced too low without a good explanation gets no traffic because people assume something's wrong with it. So it's okay to price aggressively in the marketplace, provided that you do that good listing we're talking about and explain it. But once they're on your lot, things like window labels, things like warranty information. They're very impactful, especially when you're talking about certified pre-owned. And to your point, Mike, you should be walking through those inspections and the ROs and things like a history report and a pricing guideline, right? A lot of dealers today are finding that keeping that information in a folder on the dash is the best way to go. There's variances of opinion, but what's your take on merchandising, Mike?
Well, the first thing, you've got to look at the competitive set around you and what they're doing to be sure that you're at least close to what they're talking about. So if the competition has a 5-day money-back guarantee, 7-day money-back guarantee, you've got to be somewhere close to that 5 or 7-day money-back guarantee, or you're not going to be competitive with what's going on in the marketplace. So you need to do a little work, and getting ready for 2019, I think it's a good time now to start. What is the competition around you doing? I think CarMax is up to 7 days now. A lot of these places, I see Carvana's doing a 7-day. A lot of them are doing 5-day money-back guarantees, so forth. You say, well, how important is that? Well, it's really gives the customer peace of mind, and I think it's an important thing. And quite frankly, not that many of those cars do come back. So important to do. I think, window labeling is certainly important. It's required by law to a degree, so we have to go with that. But the other parts we're talking about, showing the RO and what you've done to the car, service history, if you have it available, any inspections you've done to the car, all of those things are critically important to the customers of today.
100% agree, right? What about one price, Mike? I wanted to save that to last because it's a hot topic today. Some of the big dealer groups are going to one pricing. Independents are starting to do a little bit of one pricing. What's your take on that? You either got to do it or learn how to compete against it, don't you, in today's market?
Yes, I think you do. It does simplify things for the consumer. There's nothing worse than going on and looking at a website on a vehicle, and they don't. Some websites today don't even price the car. They're looking for you to make an offer, which is kind of silly thing. Well, I just saw one today actually that I was looking at there, and it says give me an offer. Well, we're back. That's way off of the way the world is today. You can find a price on about anything. Maybe you can't at some of these car dealerships today, but I do think one pricing has its place. To say everybody has to do it, I would say probably not. It depends on how good your staff is and how good they can sell your approach to the consumer. But you're definitely going to price them online, and you sure don't want to have a different price at the store than you do online. So you need to make them match up at some point. Now, whether you negotiate part of it away, that's another thing, but it may be you may not want to talk about changing price, but you may want to throw in, some add-on floor mats, something of that nature to help you close the deal might be a better way to look at it.
Certainly a factor today, though. Certainly a factor with everyone kind of leaning that way. Certainly more people are leaning that way. And to your point, not everyone should go that way, but you should at least be aware of it and know if your competition's one price, how do you compete against that? But if we move forward, Mike, we want to wrap all this up into a bow a little bit, right? And take a look at 2019. We looked at how to assess our 18. We've looked so far at how to take a look at our competition and be competitive. So now, tomorrow comes. We got to look at tomorrow. We got to be prepared for tomorrow. We got to look at 2019. The adage has been coming down on us for a long time now that the new generation of buyer, a lot of people refer to them as millennial, whatever you refer to them as, we're getting to that point where they're going to be 60 and 70% of every customer we deal with, right? Every customer that calls or walks in off that street is the new generation of buyer. And quite frankly, they just simply don't buy the way that the previous generations has. And the old adage of keep doing what you've been doing, well, you keep doing that and you're going to just simply have a diminishing return. So when we look at it, I think the first thing we need to look at is the sales process itself, right? If your dealership is still hanging on to that dear old 10-step that I got taught it way back when in the 80s from a gentleman that got taught it in the 60s. And we just kind of sometimes in this business hang on to stuff just because it's been around a lot, right? But if we look at it, it just got to be different. If you're looking at your dealership today, the internet showroom plays a major part. NADA says maybe it's 90% of consumers before they hit our dealerships are on that internet, and they spend 14 hours doing all that research. Well, that's a different buyer than it used to be. Mike, you agree with that?
Well, I do agree with it. There's no question. I think you have to be prepared when you, at the dealership level, however, to still be able to do a few of the things that are in the normal sales process. However, I think you could streamline it and make it a lot easier by finding out how far along the funnel the customer is.
You're 100% right. You're 100% right. As a matter of fact, it's gone really. We just put it on the screen for everyone to take a look at. It's really down to just a 3-step process, Mike. And to your point, there always has to be a little bit of a control. You don't want to manage a staff of salespeople and have no idea what's going on with each customer. But really, you can throw out that old 10-step today and just go with a simple 3-step process. And that old adage of building rapport and that being the most important thing to do up front, it still is today. But how you build that rapport is certainly different. What used to be, do you like sports? Do you like fishing? Do you like dogs? All that kind of stuff is simply switched over. So the new buyer just simply wants merit for the amount of work they've done. They're spending 14 hours. 90% of your customers are spending that time doing research. All they're asking for is a little acknowledgement. Recognize that I'm not walking into your dealership cold like it used to be and don't know anything what's going on like I'm told it used to be. I have done my research, and they're just looking for a little bit of merit for that. And then they just simply want you to start wherever they left off. And don't start them at the very beginning. If they spent 14 hours working on it, pick up where they left off. And, of course, the only way you can do that is to let the customer decide what they do next, right? Let them tell you what they want you to do next. You okay with that?
Well, definitely, I am okay with it, but I still go back to the same thing. You still have to be prepared to do a proper demonstration drive and reveal all the information you have about the vehicle to give them the information that they really need to solidify your pricing. You don't have to take them down the 10 steps to get there. And, once you have them sold, I think it still is important to show what you have available to them after sale with service department and so on and so forth, which is part of the old 10-step, but still information that will help them become more comfortable with your store.
Gotcha. If we look at the next step, being prepared for 2019, Mike, is we're going back to what you talked about, right? That appraisal process and making sure we're maximizing our appraisals. So here's the question we have for the group today listening. Are you still doing the silent walkarounds? We know today there's a better way to do things. And that's the active. Mike, you want to talk about that active trade appraisal a little bit?
Well, again, keeping the customer involved and giving them a reason. The reason they're there is they want something different. Obviously, part of that is justifying their trade and really the reason they're there to trade. If you really look at it, most customers can get from point A to point B in the car they drove in with. But they're looking for someone to kind of help them over the hump and show them why it makes sense to go to a different or newer model. So part of that is this active appraisal process and being active with the customer and showing them the things that they're going to have to do, take the mystery away from how we got to that particular car, takes all the fear out of it and any mistrust. And, it's actually gives you, the salesperson, an opportunity to help sell the customer on the value of trading their car with the money that they're going to have to spend on it to get it up to the kind of shape that the car they're looking at has. So those are all certainly important and part of this active trade process. And if you'll use it correctly, it will certainly help you when you're getting ready to close the sale because of the credibility of the reconditioning you're going to have to do to that car to get it to retail ready for the next customer.
That's absolutely true. And when that process goes correctly, and you get it smoother and you get them involved and they're not just sitting there in fear for 10, 15 minutes because someone walked away with their keys, it will absolutely help limit negotiations to hold more gross and win more trades. No question about that one. So if we look at the next one, and we want to look at, using the tools, Mike, right? You touched on it a little bit, but there's so many tools out there now to get an accurate trade figure and recon sheets and, market pricing with all the tools, whether it's mobile or, tools like the retail tools that tell you what cars are retailing for in the marketplace, and actually having that form and then displaying that form to the customer, being able to walk that customer through where the figure came from, where the trade amount came from, will absolutely win you more trades. So, Mike, the third element here for the 19 is taking a look at your reconditioning costs and reviewing your reconditioning costs. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, yeah, we show it here where, and if you're not using the form similar to the one on the left here, when you're actually looking at the car and estimating the reconditioning cost and what you're going to do that car, this is really a time saver for you. If done correctly, you could actually use this to start the service process. And also, you can say, if my estimate's $1,000, that's what I'm approving for this service department to spend on this particular car. And if they're going to go over it, they need to talk to me before they get there. So these two things tie together rather closely. And if you're not using a form like this on the right, you're going to have some gaps where, again, you estimated the cost at $1,000, and all of a sudden, when you get the car on the lot and look a few days later, you've spent $1,500 or $1,800. That comes out of the gross profit side of the equation. So getting those two numbers from your estimate to your actual as close as possible is really when you get good at being a used car director, an appraiser, and getting your cars ready for retail. And these are things that we get a little lazy and don't do that can help us improve our gross profits on, the fact of the matter is the retail pricing, now that we have all of this information on the internet, is getting a little tighter. So we have to look at ways that we can control our costs on the cost side of things to keep those gross profit numbers where we'd like to see them.
The cost side of things, Mike, would you touch on that third-party review a little bit? And, this is something that dealers today might take their eye off the ball a little bit. And I know you have a little passion for this one. So will you talk about the third-party review?
Well, I think the thing that, we get, again, we've been doing business with old Joe for a long time, and we don't really go out and look to replace Joe. But by the same token, as Joe twisted that price up there where it's not effective in the marketplace anymore, is there someone else out there? So by taking a look at your third-party vendors and the cost of doing business with them, you may want to take a review, and it's a good thing to do once a year, I think, and this time of the year is a good time to do it to get ready for next year if you're going to make any changes, because sometimes those changes do take some time. But, you need to review all the things that you're doing with third party, what the cost is there somebody that can do the job the same or better for less money? As much as you hate to change vendors, sometimes it certainly is needed. And as business gets tougher, every dollar we save is a dollar we can put in our pocket. And those are really important in these times as new car sales look like they're going to loom a little lighter in the coming year. Used cars is the place where we can control our costs. We can control our inventories. There are a lot of things that we can do with used cars you can't do with new, and it's really a huge driver for your business, and it's the place where you really need to look at to keep your bottom line net where it was hopefully these last few years by improving your used car business as you go forward.
You know what? That makes a lot of sense, and we've delivered quite a bit, right? We keep these webinars to a timed format, and so we've covered the assessing the 18. We look at the competition and what we need to do moving forward. So at this time, we'd like to open it up for any questions that may have came through the system. Dan, would be happy to answer, Mike and I, and from us to you guys. We absolutely appreciate the opportunity. We always enjoy these events, and quite honestly, we're looking forward to the next one.
Thanks, guys, for coming back again and helping us create a successful blueprint for 2019. We really love having you on. If anyone has any questions, Bob and Mike's information is right there on the screen. Robert Grill at Carfax.com and mross55 at iCloud.com. So send anything their way. They're ready for it. To wrap up the year, we have some exciting programs. On November 13th, join us for Tax Reform, What You Need to Know Before the Year Closes. And on December 18th, we'll do our year-end roundup with predictions for 2019. So be on the lookout for promotions on how to register for those. For more information about AIADA, visit AIADA.org or call 1-800-GO-AIADA. Thanks for joining us and have a great day.